I had no idea what it would be like married to a baseball player. And I really didn't know a lot about sports. And, but in I think in the era that I lived in, that women weren't really, anyone that I knew wasn't supposed to know that much about whatever their husband, what kind of work that they did or be involved in or something. Women were primarily at home, and men went out to work. And the men made their living, and the women made their living worthwhile. Okay?
Okay.
Anyway.
Was that your expression, or was that someplace that somebody else's?
Well, since I don't know where it came from, but I thought it was,
You can claim
I thought it
it
was worthwhile.
Hey, Mom.
Hey, kids. Are we
We're
on?
rolling. We're rolling.
We're on.
We're rolling.
This will be titled "Stop and Smell the Roses." I have my own label here. You see.
Oh, I see. Stop.
Yes. Also, I want the viewing audience to know that my son waited until I was 69 years old and bald before he decided to make this.
Now tell us why. Tell us why you're bald, though.
Why am I bald? Worrying about my children. I have just finished my number 6 chemotherapy treatment for ovarian cancer, and all this started back around the 1st of May when I had some exploratory surgery, and they found out that I had ovarian cancer, and since then I've had chemotherapy every 3 weeks. And so God had his plan for me, whatever he will please let me know what it is, so I can continue on doing something worthwhile, and I'm ready to go. Before we married, I was working at the Merchants Bank downtown, and Dad was already a professional baseball player because he'd started that when he'd signed when he was 17 years old, and he'd already played some minor league baseball. And the reason that we met was because a fellow that was working in the same department at the bank where I did was going to Spring Hill College, and Dad was going to Spring Hill College on the off season when he wasn't playing baseball. And so this fellow thought that it'd be great for us to have a blind date. I knew who Dad was because I had seen his picture in the paper, one of the rare times when I ever read the sports page, and I knew I just knew something about him around town. Dad was a great athlete. He could have played other sports other than baseball, but he just had so much talent and so much potential. So we married and had an apartment down on Reed Avenue for about a month or so, and Dad was going to school and also getting ready to go off and play baseball. And we thought we were going to Louisville, which was the Red Sox AAA baseball town, and instead they sent us to Birmingham. And so we went to Birmingham, and it turned out to be the absolute pit bottom year of the Birmingham Baseball Club. This was a AA baseball club where they had a lot of baseball clubs in those days. And I liked the people that I met, and everyone was nice. And one piece of advice Dad said he wanted to give me about baseball was when you're in baseball, you better be nice to everybody because you meet some of the same people going up as you do coming down within the system, because everybody aimed to go to the major leagues. At that time, baseball players were playing almost every day, every night, I should say, and then a doubleheader maybe on Saturday or Sunday. And so you were up late at night, so you ate after the ball game. You ate supper after the ball game, which meant you cooked supper after the ball game, or else you cooked dinner early, like say maybe you ate at 2 or 3 o'clock. And so you would sleep till, but baseball players, they were accustomed to sleep until 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning because they would get up and eat, and then they would go and have breakfast somewhere or maybe have lunch, but then they could go for like hours and hours without eating. But they had to, if the ball game started at 7, they had to be there at 6, to take in field, and so the hours were just different. So fortunately, since I have absolutely no sense of direction, we live close to the ballpark, and so I would take him to the ballpark, and then then come. Well, first we'd eat, I guess, and then I would take him to the ballpark and go back and get dressed and so forth, and then I would go to the ballpark later, and they always had a special section where the wives sat, and all the gals were really nice, and very few of them had children because most of them were young, and also it was just not a good life for having children, really. If you're playing sports or any kind of celebrity kind of thing where you have to be away from home, it's not really conducive to family life. It's really hard. The season was over, and if you were just a minor ball player, you would come back home and you would stay until perhaps you would go to spring training in February, and usually in Florida at that time. But Dad had a pretty good year, and so they invited him to finish up the season with the Major League Ball Club up in Boston. We came back to Mobile, and we found a garage. We found a garage apartment where some people we knew had lived, and Dad was still going to Spring Hill, and so we lived there. And he would go to school in the morning. In the afternoons, he'd come home, and then he would go and be like a sports and games leader, recreation department. And some nights he would referee basketball games.
So he would make money doing that?
Yes. I mean, he was always working. Dad always had a job. He always had a job. And at other times later on, he worked, he worked for a clothing store. And just
which one?
Metzger's,
Okay.
which was downtown. But all ball players then, they were just, no ball players didn't make that kind of money then. And so whether you were minor league or major league, they didn't make a great deal of money. And so everybody went home they needed to find a job. We had a nice winter, and then Angie was born the 14th of February, and then the next week, Dad had to leave to go to spring training down in Florida with the Red Sox because he was playing really well.
Where did they go? You know where they went?
Went to Sarasota, Florida. That's where the Red Sox trained then. Then I couldn't go to spring training. When the ball club, they trained for a month or 6 weeks, and when they finished training in Florida, the ball players got on a train, or a plane, usually a train, and they left and went north to wherever they were playing, which there weren't that many clubs then. The wives, they had to find the best way you had a car. So you had to drive, you had to get to your destination, wherever you were going to live, by yourself. You had to make your own arrangements. There was you didn't travel with a ball club or anything like that. And Papa was going to drove Angie and I up to Boston so we could join Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And Dad had found an apartment for us in a duplex. We were upstairs, and a couple owned the house, lived downstairs in Newton Center. And like I said, Papa drove me up. Well, at that time there weren't any interstates, and it took us 4 days to get there because Papa didn't drive fast either. And Papa had gone back home, and when I look back, it's kind of funny now, but I thought I didn't worry about it at that point. But Nanny used to say how worried she was because here I was 20 years old. I was 20 years old with a baby that was born in February, March, April, May, a 3-month-old baby in a town I had never been to before, never seen, did not know one soul in the world, had no idea where anything was, and Dad was on the road when I got there. I was there a week by myself with Angie and didn't know anybody, but it did not seem, didn't seem very strange. I was in a nice place, and Dad we talked on the phone. So you know, when you're young, you can just do a lot of things because you're so immature and dumb. You think you know a lot. But I guess that's a good thing you don't know some things. You know, you'd go into the ball games sometime. I never did take any of you all to any of the ball games because I didn't think that was the place. I didn't think that was a place for babies and young kids to be.
So you had somebody babysit?
So if I went to a guy, consequently, I really did not go to a lot of ball games. The most ball games I ever went to was before we had children. But after we had children, I rarely went to a ball game because unless I got a babysitter, then that I would go. But we had like I said, it was a nice introduction to baseball because we're nice people. But again, different kind of lifestyle. Dad going to the ballpark early in the afternoon with the car, so you're there
by yourself.
By yourself.
I see.
And so you know, and until he comes home at 11 o'clock at night, and then he sleeps the next day, and then but babies wake up early. But anyway, we made everything was fine. Made some nice friends.
Friends you made, were they mainly the other players?
Other players, yeah. Well, you really didn't have any opportunity to meet anybody else. Usually during one road trip, the wives would try to get together, and everybody got a babysitter, and we'd go out to go out to eat someplace. So you had to telephone. You could call people, but anyway, the season passed, and anyway, it's an interesting experience. After the season was over, we came back to Mobile, and we were going to go back to this same garage apartment that we lived in, only we were going to go downstairs, but it really wasn't in that good a condition. So we just asked Nanny and Papa if it would be okay if we stayed with them for that few months, and we'd share that, we'd pay them like we would for an apartment, or share the cooking expenses and stuff like this. And so we did, and it really was a great winter. We had a wonderful time. Uncle Frank was still at home, and Kaka,
he was.
And so we used to sit around, had Nanny and Papa, and all of us would sit around the table at night eating, and just like Bolling's do, we eat and talk and laugh a lot. And so we had a great time, and Dad and I would be able to, we would be able to go out and be with our friends and play cards, or go someplace because Nanny was there with Angie. So we had a nice winter. Then when February came around, it was time to go to spring training again. And so we went down to Sarasota. That was where one of the Bolling funny stories about Papa snoring was, because Papa and Nanny and Kaka came down to see us and visited, and Kaka says they always brought that army cot for her to sleep on. Every time she'd turn over, the thing would squeak, and Papa snored so loud that I think that's when Dad went out in the car so he could sleep, or he got in the bathtub, one or the other. I don't know, because the little house was so small. Spring training broke up. Dad went up with the team to. All the way up, and they played exhibition games on the way up also. Went up to Boston. Mm-hmm. And I guess I went back home. Maybe that's when Papa and Nanny went back home. Then maybe one of us drove to, I don't remember. Mm-hmm. But we got back home. And then this time my dad drove up with me and Angie. And didn't take us nearly as long. Because he drove pretty good. But he drove up there, and I think he stayed maybe a night or two or something like that. And then, we paid to fly back home like we did for Papa and stuff. That was 54. And so that year, we rented a place from someone that Dad had known. I can't remember the couple's name now, but this was out in, I can't remember the town, but it's a little house. Waltham was in Waltham. And another couple that were on the ball club, the Olsons, Carl Olson and his wife Pat, they were both expecting their second one. I was expecting you,
Mm-hmm.
and they were expecting their first child. And so they couldn't find a place to live. See, it was still difficult to find places to live. And so we had a floored attic, and it was fixed up semi nice. And we told them, they could come and stay there because it was just going to be like maybe for a couple of weeks, a month, or something like that, till they could find a place. So they came and stayed. And this is Dad's funny story about your name, because we had not discussed names of what we were going to name our children, and their son was going to be born earlier than you. We were having breakfast together, and we were discussing, well, what do you think? He said, well, we decided what we're going to name our children. And if it's a boy, we said we're going to name ours Carrie Joseph. They said, that's what we're going to name ours.
No.
Yes. Yes. And they did. They had a boy, and we had you. We thought you were going to be born in August, and so I flew home with Angie and left Dad up there.
And that was in July. So you flew and you stayed with Nanny and Papa.
Yes,
again?
stayed with Nanny and Papa again.
Not
All
a
I
jet.
remember is being in this awful airport. I guess it was LaGuardia, and I can remember being there with Angie and pregnant and crying, flying home, flying back again. Anyhow, we did that, and then and you were born before Dad. I don't think Dad was there when you were born. No, he wasn't. He wasn't there because Nanny took to the hospital. You were born at night.
Mm-hmm.
Angie was born in the daytime. That's when we bought our little house on Flint Street,
Okay.
close to Nanny and Papa. We were trying to find a place, and that's where we bought that little house on the corner of Flint and Virginia Street, and that was, like a block or two around from Aunt Belle, and then 3 or 4 blocks from Nanny and Papa on Tuttle Avenue. And Nanny used to come by in the mornings, taking Papa to work, and she'd stop and pick up Angie, and Angie would ride down with her to take Papa down to work downtown, and then drop her off on the way back. Sometimes she'd take her home with her.
That's neat.
Dad had already had one injury too.
Oh, in that first year that he
Yeah,
played.
the first year that he played. And we went in spring training. He had another injury. Yeah, there during spring training. And I think some of this stuff was so upsetting that I almost blocked a lot of it. Because I wanted to forget it. And I have. We went back up to Boston, and we lived in Newtonville. That's when we were upstairs, and it was a big house, and these people rented out the second floor, and they had rented, I guess, to hockey players and whoever else, something like this, and it had 3 floors, and the washing machine, no dryer, was in the basement. You and Angie were so were so little, and at that point, but you had dirty clothes every day, and there was no perma press. So I'd run down to the basement, and it was a ringer type washer. Run and then put the washing machine, run down 2 floors, and put the wash in there, and let it wash, and then make sure y'all okay, or else take you down there with me, or else run back up again, or take you down there with me to go when you put it through the ringer, put it into the rinse, and so on and so forth. I mean, it was a job getting the laundry out someplace. Dad was getting ready to go off on a road trip one night, and that's when a bat flew in from somebody had left one of the windows of things open upstairs someplace, and this bat flew in, and my hair was longer then, and because I used to wear it in a ponytail pulled back, and all I could think of was a bat getting in my hair. So Dad left on for 2 weeks, and I think I slept with my head under the sheet. And you and Angie kept saying, "Oh, look at the bird! Oh gosh! Oh dear me!" Before Val was born, we moved in that house on Briarwood Drive.
Oh.
That's where we moved into just before Val was born. So it was 1956 that we sold the house on Flint Street, I guess it was, yeah. See, I'm gauging everything like, I can remember things like where you all were.
Uh-huh.
And, age-wise and that kind of thing. Because that's, that's just what I was tuned into.
Right.
Kind of zipping along here a little bit. Not really. So fuzzy brain. Attention audience, I have chemotherapy drugs in my brain. This was 57. Dad got traded to Washington from Boston. That's right. Dad had gotten hurt there, and
in Washington.
In Washington, and that's when he gotten badly hurt, when he got his elbow dislocated and sliding in, and he was really in bad. He was really in bad shape. But nobody called. The ball club didn't call and let us know. We just knew that he was in the hospital, but that he'd had this injury. Well, I couldn't go and leave 3 kids, to go. I couldn't go and leave 3 kids and go up there and see him, and he didn't want me to. But Dad was sick and in the hospital, and we didn't know it until we got up. And then when I became friends with some of the wives there, and they said, "We wondered why you didn't come up because your husband was so sick." Mm-hmm. And I said, "We didn't know how sick he was, but he was really bad." And I don't know how long he stayed. I don't remember how long he stayed in the hospital. But then, like I said, we came up, and Val was little, and y'all were little, and we didn't have Rick then.
Oh, and, yeah, I remember those apartments. There were like
that's when we slid.
Apartments.
That's where, yeah, and when you slid down the little hills on the cardboard and that kind of stuff, because that's when we first got the movie camera.
Mm-hmm.
We took movies of that, and that was nice for being there. But I never went into the ball club. I never went into the ball games that much. It was a very confining. It's a very confining thing in the sense, and it's a very lonely life, or it was then. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not now. Maybe because they have more access to different places and things like that. But at that time you just didn't. But at night, we met nice people, and we had some good experiences. And when we were in Washington, we went to went to see Tip O'Neill. He came to the hospital to see Dad, but we went to the Capitol. We went to rode the little trolley underneath, and went to the Senate restaurant and had the bean soup. I still have the recipe for the bean soup. So we saw a couple. We did a couple of things like that. But like I said, I never went to the ball game again that much, and didn't really get to see a lot of the. Didn't get to see really a lot of the sights and things that when we were there. It just, like I said, it just wasn't accessible to do things with a lot of with young kids. Mm-hmm. And I always like for you all to have your meals. There was no fast food places to go and get food. I mean, all the food that you had was prepared at home. Mm-hmm. Was prepared at home, and I just like for you all to have your naps when you were supposed to have your naps, and play when you were supposed to play, and get to bed at a decent time, and that kind of thing. Oh, remember the winter that we spent down in Florida?
I don't know.
Okay, this was before Rick was born. This was the winter of. Val must have been a year up. This must have been 58.
Was this in Miami?
Yes, that's when we had that crazy winter in Miami. That was the year that he was playing with Washington. Dad had started working some with Waterman, and so we thought that the
container ship operation.
Mm-hmm. We thought that we were going to spend the winter maybe in Houston. When we got home, Dad went down to Waterman's office, and they said, "Guess what? You're not going to Houston. You're going to Miami." So we loaded up and we went down to Florida. And I'm trying to remember how Dad found this house. Just a very modest little cement block house with terrazzo floors. And Val was a year old, and she broke every toy that y'all had. She dropped everything on the floor. We moved in, and we'd been there about a month or something. And the bottom line of all this is that this guy that was supposed to have sublet the house, he didn't own the house, or he owed money. He owed all the furniture. They came and repossessed the furniture and gave us some. We had some other little. They gave us some other little used furniture, something. I don't know if we rented it or what, but I mean, they took the refrigerator. They just took everything. It was just awful. This was the coldest winter that I don't think there were curtains on the. Yeah, I don't think there were curtains on the wall, on the windows. The coldest winter Miami had ever, and God bless the gal across the street. I'd made friends with the gal across the street, and she brought over a heater for us. You go into this where they had the washing machine, and you turn on the washing machine, and you had to, when it got on one of the cycles, you had to stand there and hold it because it rocked all over the place and shut down and wouldn't work. And it leaked, and I was scared to step down. I was afraid I'd get electrocuted, so I stood on the ledge and held the washing machines. Then Nanny and Keke and Papa came down for Christmas, and we all had the flu together. Because I think Nanny probably had it, but she just didn't let on. And I don't know where everybody slept. I don't know where everybody slept or anything. And also, Dad was working at, this is when they had the Sealand container business. They were just starting up, which meant they lifted the, when you got a truck and you got the body and then you got the back part. Mm-hmm. And which meant they just started this thing, when the boats would come in, they would lift off the back part of the truck and just lift it with a crane and put it into the ship. Mm-hmm. So Dad would go, he'd take the car and go to work at the shipping place, the dock, and he might be gone 2 days, depending on the ships coming in or something.
Oh, because of the
because
how long it took to unload.
Yeah, however long it took to unload, and however long, whatever. So anyway, and these are all the times when people used to say, "You have such a glamorous life. I just cannot believe it. I'm knowing someone like you. What a glamorous life you have." Oh, God.
Was it glamorous?
Oh, was it? We did. The most glamorous part of that year was being in Miami. We got a babysitter, and we went to the Fontainebleau Hotel, and we saw Tony Bennett. And Dad said I was the only woman in there that didn't have a fur on. And I said, yeah, and a homemade dress, too. But we went and we listened to Tony sing. Oh, golly. I didn't like being in Detroit. I guess we came back to Mobile and then went to
Detroit.
Maybe. And I went to Detroit, and we rented a house there, and it was a nice couple across the street. We were out someplace. I never did. I was expecting Rick then, and you guys. I don't think I ever went into maybe like half a dozen games there. I don't think I went.
Oh, so you didn't. What didn't you like about Detroit?
Well, I didn't get a chance. I never got a chance to really know any of the other wives that much, and I was just confined. Mm-hmm. I was just confined a lot. I just don't remember and we weren't there for the whole season. Dad got sent down at the end of the season because he'd had these different injuries, and especially the ones where he hurt his ankle, and they didn't do things like they do now. They didn't let you stay out, and they didn't do all this therapy and all this kind of stuff like this. If they had, he would have had a longer career. But he got back in too early, and he never could throw, which was his strength. His fielding was his strength. He was just such an excellent fielder. His hitting was okay, but his fielding was just excellent. So anyway, he got sent down. All of us came home, and then he went to, where did he go? Can't even remember where he went there because I never went. I wasn't there. He was
Cleveland.
No, it was a minor league team.
Oh, went down to minor.
Charleston, was it? No, it was someplace in West Virginia. I can't remember now.
Then you came back to Mobile at some point, huh?
Yeah, we always came back to Mobile.
Dad was when did he must have started working for somebody else eventually after Waterman.
Yeah, he worked for I think that's when he started working for maybe Central Truck Lines, and because Waterman, well, at first he was still working for Waterman, and they wanted to transfer him over to New Orleans, and I really didn't want to move over to New Orleans, and so he'd be over there like during the week, and then come home on weekends. And
Boston.
We lived on Briarwood Drive for a while, and that's where I got my clothes dryer. Wow, 4 kids in a clothes dryer.
Well, even I'm just thinking.
Dad says you're such a martyr.
I'm just thinking that even though that the when he was playing baseball, that wasn't that wasn't your regular life.
Yes.
And then when he was working for Waterman or whatever, that wasn't a very regular
Right?
kind of life either.
No.
He was still gone a lot.
Right.
I guess he was working for Central Truck Lines. That must have been pretty much an 8 to 5 job,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah. That was pretty much it. But he was still refereeing he was still refereeing basketball games. I mean, a lot of the guys, just a lot of guys were.
Mm-hmm.
And you just had to do that when you had a family,
Mm-hmm.
family to take care of. And so he was still doing that, and of course he was always involved in some fundraising thing for TB or the JCs or something like that. And I was in the JCettes, and that was the ladies auxiliary, and that was really nice. We enjoyed doing that. And
That happened with
Dad got his job with the Red Sox because to go back to the office. Dad wrote to some of the people up there, and they said see if there was some sort of opening in baseball, and they said yes, come on. So they hired him.
Now, was that a big? Did Dad have to? I mean, how did you feel about moving back up to Boston or whatever?
Well, I really wasn't. I really wasn't thrilled, about it, but I wasn't down. I really wasn't down. It just sounded like a good opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Good opportunity for him, and for us,
Mm-hmm.
As a family, and so I think Rick was like 2 years old when we went up there. Dad was already. I think he was already up there because I forget when he had to go, and then when we followed him up there with the moving van. Dad's friend Nat Schulman and his wife Harriet. Nat was a baseball fan, and he owned a Chevrolet agency out in Hingham, Massachusetts, and they proved to be such good friends to us. And they found us a house in Sharon, Massachusetts, where they lived. It was a really nice time family-wise, I think. So even though Dad was gone, he was still gone in different irregular hours and stuff like that. We made such good friends in that neighborhood, and you all always had kids to play with, and there was the woods, and it's our first time to live in a place where there was snow, and we enjoyed seeing a lot of the things that were in that area. So it was family-wise, it was a good situation.
Mm-hmm.
And the town was nice, and the people were friendly, but the people were friendly, were more open because Dad was with the Red Sox. Being with the Red Sox, or if you were with the hockey team or anything, being in major league sports and stuff, it just opened a lot of doors for you. I mean, there's just no denying it. And I would go into some of the games, and I enjoyed going into some of the games.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you another funny thing about when Dad was playing ball though in Boston, in Fenway, the lovely baseball field had a minute parking area behind the place, and so I try to leave early whenever I would go into. A few times I went to the game and I try to go in so I could get a good place to park, because the parking area was so small, and they had this parking attendant called Henry. And so Henry would direct all of us wives in there where we could park and where we couldn't park and everything. And he'd direct us in these almost impossible situations to get in and out of. Well, come to find out, Henry couldn't drive. gosh. It was such an odd experience to go up for Major League Baseball games and to be in that celebrity kind of situation. I mean, of course, they don't want to see the wives. I mean, knock you down. Give me that autograph, fella. Wife, who cares? We don't want to meet you. You go to the bank. You go to the banquet. We say, and here's your lovely wife. But Dad made a lot of personal appearances because he played baseball and also because to go and represent the Red Sox. But you'd go out to the parking area, and when Dad was playing, and these people would just be hanging over the fence, Hey, there he is, so and so, and such, that kind of thing. So that was a different kind of situation. And you guys sure didn't know anything about bubblegum cards, did you?
No. We sure found out.
Sure found out. Too late.
Right.
Dad never saved it. He never saved a glove. He never saved a uniform piece. He never saved anything. That's the past. Who cares?
Several years we would go down to Florida for spring training. Y'all take us out of school.
Yeah. When we lived up there, when Dad was in the office, when in Sharon or something, then that's when we went down to spring, trying to take y'all out of school, and we go down there and trying to play. So remember we lived in that motel?
Oh yeah.
I don't remember where everybody slept because it was just like this
Well,
one room and then a step up to the kitchen and
the kitchenette. Yeah.
and then this was like a bedroom, living room, whatever, and here we were.
And I think one year all of us got
Five of
German
us.
measles.
Yes.
We got all measles. We all got measles.
Yeah.
Were you excited when Dad said that when Dad decided to take the job to come back to Mobile to scout or whatever?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Did y'all talk about that or
well,
whether to do it or not? Or?
Yeah, well, he talked. Papa really wasn't in good health, and there was this. The scouting job was available, and like I said, Papa wasn't in good health, and you all were getting big, and I could see where in the town where it was great for when you all were young, before you, but there was nothing in the town for teenagers. So that's when we came back to Mobile, and I guess we came about Mardi Gras time. We rented that house over on the corner of Thornhill.
Well, we lived with Nanny, I think.
Yeah, we stayed with them
while.
we stayed with them for a couple of months, and because I guess Dad was gone most of that time scouting. The April after we were there, that's when my dad died. So we'd gotten all kind of settled in. Y'all were in school and stuff like this. The Red Sox offered Dad another job. They offered him a job to come back as like general manager.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we hadn't been there. Oh, and that's when I had that first bout of cancer.
Right in your leg.
Yeah, in my leg. That's when I had that melanoma in my leg, and I was just recovering from that. And I think we had just moved in that house not too long, maybe a couple of months or something. And I'd had that surgery, and then I don't know if that was before you had the accident and you were in the hospital with your arm. It was somewhere around in that time. And I think that's when we had reconstruction done on Angie's finger.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there was just a lot going, gotten on, but I was still like getting over some of the surgery from having this, and it said they've offered me this job. Well, at first, I thought, well, you just I guess we'll just have to do this. And then the more that I thought about it, the more I realized I just couldn't deal with that. I mean, I just have to admit it. I just could not deal with all of that and
moving again, getting over your illness,
and getting over surgery and moving everybody back up to a place. I mean, it was just like I just couldn't deal with it. And I told Dad, I said, now if you want, and I told him, I said, if you want to go up there and take the job and see how it is, and then maybe we can come later or something. Mm-hmm. And then he said no, that he just didn't want to be away from his family, that kind of thing. So anyway, we made that was a very, very hard decision.
Mhm.
That was really one of the hardest decisions because he really wanted the job. And the another thing that I didn't like about the job too is that I knew what they were paying the guy that had the job, and they were not going to pay Dad that money. They thought they could get him on the cheap, and I knew he was worth more. And so that was, like I said, that was a really hard decision.
Mhm.
But so we stayed there, and we rented that house for I think a couple of years, and that's when we came over. That's when we came over, built
That's
this
when you
house.
built this house,
That's
right?
when Uncle Grady. We found this lot, and Uncle Grady, bless his heart, he agreed to build a house, this wonderful house that we're still in. That was in 1967. To me, as it turned out, I thought family-wise that although that was a hard decision, I think this was better for our family
Mhm.
because I knew where you were going to school, who your friends were, what you were going to be able to, what you were going to be able to do, I guess. And I just felt like you'd have a better future.
Mhm.
And it really would have been so difficult to live to have lived there, I think.
Oh, back in Boston.
Yeah, I think it would have been very difficult unless we lived in another town. Different than where we were.
Well, even as it turned out, with Dad, having a job here as a scout, he was gone a lot.
Yes.
But then during the
But I had more of a
during
support.
off-season.
Yeah. But I had more selfishly. I guess it's selfish. I had more of a support system here. I mean, I knew if anything, if I got sick, or if something happened to me that I couldn't take care of. If I got sick or something like this, and Dad was gone, I knew that I had Nanny and Papa and Aunt Ruth and Uncle. I knew I had friends and I had relatives here that I could count on. And I never felt like that. I mean, I knew I had friends when we lived up there, but not those kind.
Mhm.
Maybe one or two. But I really felt that there was a better support system. And as it turned out, you all got to know more about your family and have your grandparents in your life.
Mhm.
And I think that made I think that's been a big plus for them and for you and for me, for all of us.
Mhm.
Hi, honey.
Hey, Dad.
Come in, give me a kiss. Come here, sweetheart. Come here, you little sweaty thing.
Is Rip in yet?
Come in.
Rip's up?
Come give me a kiss. I love you. There it is on TV.
I know it. You're on TV.
And with that, I'm going to end
This is the
thing.
best man in the world.